This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Today's episode of Doc and Jock is brought to you by Score, a new mobile app coming soon. Score is an interactive game that lets users win deals at bars and restaurants based on what's going on in live sporting events. Find new places to watch games and save money on your bill at the same time by taking advantage of Score's unique interactive specials that give you an additional stake in the action. A Score special can be anything a location wants it to be, from 10% off an item if a team scores a touchdown to a free round of drinks if a quarterback throws for 400 yards. Any stat can be turned into a game. Pick the deals you want to win, watch the games you want to watch, and score deals in real time. The app will update when your team or player records a relevant stat. When the conditions of your deal are met, the coupons are sent directly to your device to show your server or bartender. It's that easy. Score is coming to the App Store and Google Play soon. For more information, check them out on the web at score-app.io and follow them on Twitter and Instagram at ScoreDeals. Score, watch games, score deals.
Is there a sports podcast in Detroit that people are talking about?
Hey everybody, this is Freddie Cohen of ESPN Radio. When I'm not talking about breaking news or breaking news on ESPN Radio, I'm always a fan and listen to the Detroit Sports Podcast, and so should you.
So, cuz, I played your wife in fantasy football, all right? And I did everything I possibly could, did my research, I was invested, made the proper move, getting the right quarterback, picked up Jimmy Garoppolo, and I'm watching the games as they go along. And sometimes when you're following along a fantasy football contest, you text some people, and you're kind of just going, look what happened here, look what's going on. And, I was really happy that I made the right move picking up Jimmy Garoppolo. My lineup was set, it peaked, I could not do really any better. And so I look over, and Todd Gurley busted out for 44 fucking points.
He carried her team.
He did, basically. If he just has a regular day, 2 touchdowns and 100 yards, I win, and I'm in the finals. So I text my buddy, and I'm like, fuck you, Gurley. And he goes, bro, me and the little kid were looking at pictures, and all of a sudden, fuck you, Gurley comes up, and the kid's 6 years old, and I said, thank you so much for the laugh. I'm like, tell the kid it's fucking French. You know, he's like, we were looking at pictures and he can read. So I corrupted, my cousin's little kid by my anger outburst. I felt better, but I said, so can you imagine little kid and his dad are looking at, oh, look at the Christmas tree. Oh, look at the present. All of a sudden the thing pops up. Fuck you, Gurley. Man, I couldn't believe it. 4 freaking touchdowns. Yep. Unbelievable. The reason why I didn't play Jared Goff was I felt like Seattle at home would have done some things, but my goodness, the Rams went there and they handled their business. And Todd Gurley, I mean, he got 2 or 3 touchdowns pretty quick, and he got 40-plus fantasy points, and it fucked my team. So, but congrats to Lorraine. I mean, that's all you can do is put yourself in the best position. The luck factor took over, and when you get a guy to get 45 points, that's freaking awesome. And Crabtree did the job Sunday night to help cushion the lead ahead of my contest with Garoppolo.
Yeah, I was watching highlights. I ended up going to bed early on Sunday because I was tired, but I ended up catching highlights of the Atlanta game. And I know you had Julio Jones going, and there was a bubble screen or a play where Julio Jones got the ball out along the sideline. And next thing you know, you see him rumbling, and he gets pushed out at the 2-yard line. And I was like, geez, man. Like, if you would have scored that touchdown, I think you might have won because she only beat you by a few points. But yeah, I was watching. I was like, man, it was that close. It was that close to you going on and you playing for the championship. But look, you're still playing for some money. You're trying to win your buy-in. So that's what you get for third place. So if you just go ahead and handle your business against the guy who had the absolute best record in the league this year, only dropping 1 game during the regular season, that was to me, and then 1 game during the playoffs, that was to a buddy of ours, Jeff. You sit there, you beat that guy. I mean, good luck, but you beat that guy. Hey, you're going to get some cash.
It's all good, my friend. I'm looking forward to this podcast, looking at the Lions, Detroit Tigers, and we'll play a round of the Doctors in Session. A lot to get to in the world of Detroit sports. Let's get into it.
Yeah, for sure, man. I didn't really know how to craft this rundown because there was so much going on in Detroit sports. I think I want to start with the Detroit Lions. Like you said, we're going to do some Docs in Session. We're going to do some Tigers. But I think I want to start with the Lions. I mean, if you look at what happened on Saturday, Lions end up getting a win against the Chicago Bears, but it doesn't necessarily help them or ensure that they're going to make the playoffs. I mean, they still have an uphill battle. Let's just look at what they have to do to sit there and make it into the playoffs here. They're currently in the 7th position, which means they're one outside of making it into the playoffs. They need Atlanta to sit there and lose their next 2 games. They need to win their next 2 games. Carolina, if Carolina stumbles along the road and Atlanta keeps going, then Carolina's just going to fall back one and be in 6th. And on top of that, you now have Seattle, who's right behind you, who if they sit there and they win their next 2 games, they're in. It's a complete mess for the Detroit Lions. There are no guarantees that they're going to make it to the playoffs. Even with Aaron Rodgers now being placed on season-ending IR, there are no guarantees for this team. They've got to go out and they've got to win both their games. On top of that, they need help from other teams. And by help, I mean those teams screwing it up and losing games. Look, Atlanta is a very good team. Seattle's a very good team. You know this. We all know this. On top of that, Carolina seems to have figured it out. Cam Newton is playing stellar right now. So you need all these teams to sit there and drop games in front of you, and even then, you might not get in. Going into, I believe it was Monday night, maybe it was Tuesday night after the Atlanta game, they had like a 52% chance of making it to the playoffs, which, yeah, that's better than a coin flip, but not by much. At this point, the Lions have an uphill battle, and I don't think they're going to get in, even if they win 10 games. So that leads me to this question. What do the Lions do with Jim Caldwell? He, by all accounts, is the winningest coach in Lions history for, like a 4-year period. If they win 10 games this year, he will have gotten you to the playoffs 2 years out of 4, and he would have. He doesn't have a losing record. He put up 10 wins, double-digit wins for this team if they win out. Do you go ahead and fire him, or do you keep him? I think this right here now sets up perfectly to find out what Bob Quinn is made out of.
This is the perfect dilemma for the Lions to be in. I mean, it's really tough because of the fact that you got 2 games left. You don't know if you're going to qualify for the playoffs or not. I mean, if you win out, let's say you beat Cincinnati and you beat Green Bay now without Aaron Rodgers, you're going to have a coach who's done solidly. You're going to have a coach who's been productive. But it's really all in how you look at it. The Lions organization has a history of being loyal to guys that have been maybe not even as productive as Jim Caldwell has been. So what most people think is that Jim Caldwell is going to be back. But the question we're asking is, what do you do with Jim Caldwell? So that puts me in a tough spot in that you kind of have to hope that the Lions lose the last 2 games. You hope that in a tremendous fashion they make a lot of mistakes. They look unprepared. They look like a team that doesn't, belong on the football field. And with that, then you have a scenario in which...
I want to stop you real quick. So I'm pulling up some Jim Caldwell information here just because I want to be able to paint a picture for you as to what he's done since he's been here. Who's this random white guy? Who is this?
I don't know. That's funny.
I typed Jim Caldwell into the Google machine, and there's some random white guy who pops up.
That's funny. Take a picture of it.
Next to a couple other pictures. Some of them are Jim Caldwell. Some of them are other Jim Caldwells, I'm guessing. Who is this random white guy?
That's unbelievable.
I don't know. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's funny.
I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, but it's a tough spot to be in because let's say they win the 2 games that go 10-6 and they don't make the postseason. How are you going to fire a guy that has 10 wins, that's had a winning record, throughout the better part of his tenure here? The part, though, that I look at is we don't know what Bob Quinn is thinking. We don't know in the meeting rooms what's going on. We don't know what the criteria is that he's looking forward to. Is he being told by management you got to keep him? Is he free to go out there and make a decision? The 2 questions that people are asking is there anybody out there on the list that could come in here and do better? Or you say to yourself, okay, if Jim Caldwell is still here, can you have success with him going forward? And that's the question I feel like I know the answer to, is that I don't see a Super Bowl ring. I don't see Lombardi Trophy being held up by Jim Caldwell. So I'm inclined to make the move in that once you recognize, the moment, the inkling you recognize that Jim Caldwell is not the guy, you move on. Because people will say, you can't move on from Jim Caldwell. What if it gets worse? Well, it's Bob Quinn's job.
You can't live like that.
You can't live like that. It's Bob Quinn's job in the better part of the last year to figure out who's on the list, whether it be a Mike Vrabel, whether it be someone from the New England tree. Some people online have started to say some good things as well regarding, you know what, maybe looking at the tree of Bill Belichick is overrated because most of the coaches from his tree are not performing. Maybe you want to look on the staff of Kansas City because those coaches that have worked under Andy Reid have done a better job. But these are things that This is what Bob Quinn's paid to do, is to go out and find talent, find talented individuals that are going to go out there and be productive. I mean, you already whiffed on the Washington offensive coordinator who turned around the Rams. So those of you out there that say, oh, nobody can just come in here if you just blow out all the coordinators and just turn it around. Did anybody assume that McVay was going to go from Washington and Kirk Cousins and what he was doing over there, go to the Rams and with Jared Goff and turn them around? Did you see that coming? No, but the Rams did. They figured out, look, this is a young hotshot offensive coordinator. This guy could do some things, and he's super young. That's the job of Bob Quinn. So you can't be skeptical all the time in terms of what the Lions are going to do. But this is a tough spot because, the Lions are going to have to decide what the future holds for Jim Caldwell, and most of us don't believe they're going to make the right call.
Yeah, I'm totally nervous about this because I find it to be an extremely tough spot if you're Bob Quinn. You've got a coach who sits there and has put up, if he does win out, he puts up double-digit wins. He got you to the playoffs at least 2 out of 4 years that he was here, possibly making it a third time, depending on what happens in front of him. You look at his record over that period. I mean, the guy went 11-5, then he went 7-9, which, again, 7-9 is not a horrible record. Some teams do make it to the playoffs with that type of record. That year, they finished third in the NFC North, however. 9-7 last year, and then this year, if they do win out, he'll be 10-6. He's been a pretty good head coach here, at least record-wise and winning-wise. By all accounts, the locker room loves him. I find it to be an intriguing position for Bob Quinn because he now has to either have the brass tacks to sit there and go and say, hey, you know what? You're not doing enough. We didn't get in. We expect more, and you're not giving it to us, and then turn around and fire him, or say, no, it's okay. I think the biggest issue with Jim Caldwell's tenure as head coach for the Detroit Lions has been his inability and his inconsistency with being able to manage this team on Sundays. I think he does a great job Monday through Saturday. When Sunday rolls around, it's like all of a sudden his brain freezes up and he has a brain fart. Like, I have no idea how you don't have guys to get on the field. Like, you have packages set up, you yell out whatever package it is, and those guys go running on the field. You can only put 9 guys out on the field.
But what do you say to those that say, look, every coach makes mistakes. You got a situation when you look at the Lions' history where you've had a ton of bad coaches. He's been a stabilizing force, and he's gotten the team now. Here's where he's at. The team plays solidly against the crumb bums of the NFL. They beat Chicago. They can beat some good teams like Minnesota. But the challenge comes in when you face the upper echelon teams. It just seems like the Lions fail to measure up. That's when the mistakes happen. That's when maybe the schemes where you got to step it up and maybe make some adjustments that can kind of offset some of the moves you're seeing on the field in game. That's where I think he struggles the most. But do you give him any credit for at least stabilizing the Lions and at least going out there and in the past, you wouldn't know what team was going to show up. The Lions would end up beating good teams and losing to bad teams. It seems like in terms of the recipe, they're going out there and at least competing more often than not versus the teams where versus Cincinnati, I'm going to argue that I think that they're going to go out there and maybe win the game. So with Jim Caldwell, it's a stabilizing force, and it's hard to let go of something you have in an attempt to go forward. So it is a risk from the organization standpoint. I'm willing to take it. I'm sitting here. I'm saying take the risk, fire the guy, do what you got to do, pay him off. Let's look for a coach that's going to win the Super Bowl. But if you're Martha Ford, you're that organization, and you've had a season where you don't win any games, there's no guarantee you pick the right guy. There's no guarantee you make a choice, you do all these interviews, the guy doesn't come in next year and go 6-10. When with Caldwell, you at least are starting around 7 to 9 wins. The real question is, can he win a playoff game? And there might still be a scenario in which this skepticism, this constant looking at Caldwell can go away if they back into the playoffs and win a game. There's no guarantee that he doesn't make it. Maybe against all odds this season, you back in. Atlanta's got a tough schedule these next 2 games. You back in. You maybe play a Rams team that gets nervous, their butthole gets tightened, their first go around, and maybe the Lions show out. It could happen. The odds are low, but maybe Caldwell makes the decision easy by just getting that freaking playoff win. That's all we need. I
think that is managing a team with a loser's mindset. And I totally get what you're saying, right? It's hard to get rid of something that is for sure. Bob Quinn or Jim Caldwell is going to show up every single season, and he's going to give you his best effort, and he's going to sit there and win you X amount of games. You know that. You know going in. You also know going in that you're going to have fupas of where they sit there and they don't get guys on the field, and you know that there's going to be weird challenges, and there's going to be times where he should challenge that he doesn't challenge. You know this. It's a given. But I think if you sit there and you manage like that, if you sit there and you put this team together in that mindset, you're doing it like a loser. You've got to go out there and you've got to be bold. At some point, Bob Quinn's got to get his guy here. Whether it's this year or whether it's next year, at some point, Bob Quinn's got to put his foot in the fire and say, this is my guy. This is who I'm riding with. And if he doesn't do that, I don't know how you can judge his reign as a general manager. And I think this sets up perfectly, because if Bob Quinn goes out there and fires Jim Caldwell after possibly a 10-6 season, a 9-7 season, if they sit there and they make it to the playoffs, whatever the case may be, all right, Bob Quinn goes out there and fires him, you know you have a real general manager. You know you have a guy who is demanding excellence. You know you have a guy who wants to win at all costs and is willing to do whatever it takes. What Jim Caldwell is doing, what may be great for the history of the Lions, like the way Jim Caldwell has coached this team and where he has got this team is outstanding if you look at the history books for the Detroit Lions. You know, if I said, hey, there's a coach who's done X, Y, and Z, and they're all things Jim Caldwell does, you'd be like, wow, that's a really good coach for the Detroit Lions. That's awesome. But you're not winning anything. It's all about winning championships. It's all about getting to the playoffs and being consistent. And the one thing Jim Caldwell is not, on Sundays, he is not consistent. This team is not consistent on Sundays. There are some times where they show up from Jump Street. Then there are other games where they don't get going until the second half. That's on the coach. There are times where you should sit there and throw a challenge flag because obviously Quandre Diggs forced that ball loose and he scooped it up and he was going to score a touchdown. But you sit there with your finger in your butt. Yeah. Like what's going on here? You know, there are times where you should sit there and you should take 3 points and then turn around, kick the ball off. Instead, you decide to go for it. And when you go for it, you don't do anything. You turn the ball over. Pittsburgh comes down and scores, and then you lose that game. If we go back just this season alone, there's at least 4 or 5 critical errors that Jim Caldwell made that could have cost this team either a win or put them in a spot where they had to come from behind. And you don't need that. You need a coach. You don't need him to necessarily be perfect all the time. If you could find that guy, let me know, because I don't think he exists. But you need a head coach to not sit there and put your team in bad spots regularly.
Okay, what scenario do you see Jim Caldwell being the Lions coach next year, and what scenario do you see Jim Caldwell being blown out and being fired?
If Jim Caldwell loses one of these 2 games going forward, I'm almost 100% sure he's done. Like, there's no coming back. If Jim Caldwell sits there and gets on a tear and wins the next 2 games, gets into the playoffs, and upsets the Rams, and then he plays a really close game against whoever would sit there and move on to that next round, that's realistically the only way. Because at that point, Bob Quinn can come to you and say, look, we're tangibly this close. And we went head-to-head in the NFC Championship game. We're tangibly this close. We almost won that game. We ended up losing it by, we'll say, a field goal, by 4 points, whatever the case may be. You can't go into the playoffs and you can't get blown out again. You can't have a repeat of what happened against Seattle. You can't have a repeat of what happened against New Orleans a couple years ago. You can't have this happen anymore. You need a head coach to be able to get you into the playoffs. You need to win a game. And then if you're going to lose, and you're going to lose the NFC Championship game, it's got to be close. There can be no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Okay, makes sense. I do believe that, when it all comes out, when everything is said and done, Jim Caldwell will be the head coach. I mean, I mean, the Lions have been willing to stand up there and, despite what fans think, have done some things that we're not happy with. And, you do got to give Jim Caldwell credit for stabilizing it. He's done the job. I mean, many people will say, well, when you just call him a stopgap, it's insulting. That's a monumental feat to take the Lions from being a abysmal organization, being a laughingstock of the league, to just being a laughingstock for the decisions you make. You're at least getting some victories. You're at least providing us with some memories. There's at least a framework of a football team. It's nice to talk about the next step. And whether or not it's taken with Jim Caldwell or not, that's Bob Quinn's job. I am hoping that he does show some gumption and does the job and bring in better, because I mean, man, you come in, you take a job, and you don't bring in your own guy. You stick around, and you're stuck in this kind of mediocrity, this 8 to 10 wins scenario. It's allowed. You're allowed to win 12, 13 games. You're allowed to dominate. You're allowed to kind of be a favorite, be a 1 seed, and you're allowed to kind of go out there and play clean football for more than 1 game at a time. You're allowed to, as an organization, as a football team, not just destroy bad opponents, but when you play Pittsburgh and you get to the red zone that many times, you execute. Or when you play Baltimore and you need that victory, you go out there and you make it happen. Or when you play Atlanta and you're getting screwed by the refs, you go out there and you overcome it. So I think that the Lions can do better. Will they execute it? It'll be fascinating to see.
I think if you're the Cleveland Browns, where the Lions are at right now is totally acceptable. That's like winning the Super Bowl for you, because now you got some consistency. You're not an awful team. I mean, you go back 5-10 years, we were the Cleveland Browns. We're right where they're at right now. We were dying for this. Just be in the playoff contention. Just be in talks in December. And you know what? We're here now. But you know what? Now we need better. You have to do better. And I just don't see Jim Caldwell providing the necessary X's and O's, the necessary mindset for this team to sit there and overcome whatever challenge may come their way next. I just don't see it. And that, to me, as a fan, that's frustrating. That's so frustrating, because all I want is a championship. I mean, Jesus Christ, man. My dad's never seen the Lions win a championship. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, that's weird. That's awful. That's sick. I mean, in a span of a few years, you've seen the New England Patriots, win 5? I mean, really, 5? And we can't even sniff a playoff win?
Man.
Come on.
But let's turn around and look at some positives, okay? You got some players on defense who have been stepping up. I mean, just look at the Chicago game. You had Quandre Diggs. You have Darius Slay making plays. You were able to, what was the biggest thing that people talked about in terms of what you had to do to limit the Bears? You had to stop the run. They were able to effectively do that. They were able to manage the game. And so the defense has done some things to kind of stabilize. I know, granted, it's versus the Bears, but hey, you still got to go out there and execute it.
I was impressed that they were able to stymie that run game. And I don't know if it was so much the Lions stymieing it or if it was just the calls that the Bears made, because they seemed to want to come out and throw it more. But either way, the Bears didn't run it on you. You ran it on the Bears, which is a total role reversal.
Exactly.
Honestly, this is like you laying down with your wife for a nice night, and next thing you know, she wants to role play and she's a dirty pirate.
Right.
So, hey, Captain Hooker, go ahead.
And it might have been 15 weeks too late, but at least they recognize, okay, we got to limit Amir Abdullah. We don't need him. We don't need him. We don't need him on the field.
I think he played all of 5, maybe 6 snaps.
I think his days are numbered. I think they recognize, oh boy, this is a guy, when we look at the film, not doing the job. So good. I think the combination of Theo Riddick, Tion Green, you got a formulation of at least a core there. Maybe you need that one, superstar running back. And then you got to talk about Marvin Jones and the connection that he has to Matthew Stafford. It sucks for me, being that I had Golden Tate and he got all of nothing really in the end in terms of his performance versus the Bears. Had he got a touchdown and 100 yards, I might have been rolling in some business. But it seems like the deep pass connection that Stafford has made with the receiver is not to Golden Tate. It's to Marvin Jones. And good for him, because he struggled. People are discussing him, being maybe snubbed for the Pro Bowl. The only Lions representative is Darius Slay, but Marvin Jones has done a good job, I think, from overcoming the slump. Now he's playing like a G.
Yeah, if you look at where he was at when he came on the scene last year, he had like 5 really good games. And then from that point on, he was nowhere. He was like a ghost. This year, he's come out, and there's been, in the beginning, there was a little bit of an up and down, but he's totally kind of leveled everything out, and he's been playing extremely well. When the play breaks down, when the pocket is collapsing around Matt Stafford, and Matt Stafford has to roll out either to his right or to his left, Marvin Jones is the one he's looking for. He's looking downfield, and Marvin Jones knows it. He's down there trying to get open, get away from his defender, and Matt Stafford, I don't want to say he's throwing it up, because I don't like using that term with Matt Stafford anymore. Matt Stafford has proven to me that he is a viable quarterback who knows what he's doing when he's out there. But Matt Stafford throws it down the field, and Marvin Jones goes up, high points the ball, grabs it, brings it in, and they're moving the chains. If not, he's drawing a flag. I mean, you go back to that Minnesota game where he had 2 defenders just draped all over him. I mean, that was a beautiful play call by Matt Stafford and by Marvin Jones to be able to go out there and execute. He's been playing like an absolute boss this entire season. I love to see the turnaround. I mean, going into the year, We sat there and we said, this guy has to show up. Marvin Jones has to show up. He has to play. We can't have what we had last season. And you know what? He showed up and he's played. He looks really good right now.
Quandre Diggs, Darius Slay, kind of stabilizing the secondary there. Now the talk has shifted to improving that defensive line because, man, Trubisky had all day there to sit there and survey the landscape. Sometimes he could have even surveyed the routes twice because he had so much time. And it's really kind of tough in that maybe in future podcasts we got to discuss what the future should hold for Ziggy Ansah. I think he might be one of those dudes that you thought had a bright spot, but he gets axed because of the fact that you can't invest in him because he's not healthy. And I mean, nobody plays 100% healthy. You play injured, you play through stuff. He can't, and he hasn't been. And you never know. He might be 35 years old. He might be on the tail end of his career. Yeah, I mean, it's to joke around. He might be 35 and retired.
I know. I get what you're saying.
But the defense, at least the secondary, has done some things. It's nice to see Darius Slay 7 interceptions. Kind of quiet, too. A quiet 7 interceptions.
Yeah, Darius Slay's been playing out of his mind. I've been more impressed with Quandre Diggs. They moved him back to safety, and this guy's been blowing everybody up. He is such a hard hitter. He hits guys, and he forces a separation of the ball. It's been amazing since he's moved to safety. His transformation, just in awe. It's been outstanding. You're right, though. Darius Slay, he deserves his Pro Bowl award. He's been playing great. I mean, look, he is a lockdown corner in this league. He's an exceptional cornerback. And Quandre Diggs is probably about to get paid. And I think with Darius Slay, with you having both those guys, I think your secondary is in good shape for the next couple of years.
Okay, so you're impressed. Anybody else on that defense that has kind of caught your eye? I mean, it's a group that has potential, but you see some of the holes in terms of when Haloti Ngata goes down, you can't stop the run. You see Jared Davis kind of emerging. You need basically a little bit more depth along the defensive line. You need Jared Davis to take that next step, and then you need collectively schemes sometimes to do a little better because there were some plays where I feel like they've been kind of not doing man coverage. They've been kind of letting some receivers get some yards in an attempt not to let big plays happen. But, bend don't break is fair, but sometimes you want to be able to pin back and kind of blitz and get there. And they've made concerted efforts at times to limit teams, but against good teams, sometimes the opposition's line is a little bit better than the line's defensive line.
As long as this defense is forcing turnovers, they're going to win games, or at least they're going to be in contention to win games. What's the hardest position on defense to play?
End?
You think defensive end? I think middle linebacker. I think it also comes with the most responsibility because you have to know where everybody's going. You've got to be able to call out the coverage, and you got to be able to put guys in the right spot if they're not lined up correctly. And because of that, I think Jared Davis has performed pretty well this year. Yeah, in the middle of the season, he wasn't playing as well. I think he's kind of turned it back on. He looks much more comfortable now. Going into next season, I think you're going to see a dramatic jump in his performance and in his play, and I think he'll be better next season. I think this year he's been good. I think next year he'll be very good.
So how are you viewing this weekend's matchup? Of course, people are saying, of course, Marvin Lewis. The news broke that maybe just because of the fact that he's a lame duck coach, he doesn't have a deal, that maybe he kind of came out and said, look, I'm not coming back. I'm going to move on. I'm not going to face the indignity.
He needs to go. He's been there for like 15 years.
But it's kind of unfortunate that news broke, but maybe he doesn't want to face the indignity of kind of being pushed aside. So he's like, I'm out. But he refuted it. He said that's not really true.
Do you realize that guy's been there since it was in style for chicks to have a landing strip?
Really?
Like, that's a long time, dude. Like that was the most in style thing at the time. I think
no
landing
playoff
strips
wins
and whatever else. Now it's hardwoods everywhere.
I would say that's an OG move, man. To be able to stick with an organization where you get to the postseason and don't win one
ever.
That's you're riding that Super Bowl win with the Ravens.
See, that's what
you're riding that train for a lot of money.
Don't want to happen here with the Lions because I feel like Jim Caldwell is going to be. He's like Marvin Lewis, but 2.0.
Oh, man.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He's like Marv 2.0. That's exactly what you got. If Jim Caldwell stays
you know what
here,
you put in my mind? You got Matthew Stafford, year 14, and you
dye his hair red and have that bewildered look on Jim Caldwell.
Oh my
and you
God.
sit there and you make it to the playoffs 7 years and you don't win a damn thing.
Jim Caldwell's got all the white hair, and he's got the mustache with the white hair in it too, and he's sitting there still talking about check the report in 2021.
Oh no!
Check the report. And you got Matthew Stafford supporters going, he's gonna win one. Damn it! I don't care. We gave him $150 million. He's gonna win one.
He's gonna win one.
It'll be. Can you get him a linebacker? Can you get him a safety? It's like they're going to go through every position. Can you get him a right defensive tackle? Can you get him an offensive lineman? Can you get him this?
Every position's been turned over 9 times, but Stafford's still there.
And he'll still be like, why is he not in the Pro Bowl? And they'll be like, Matthew Stafford has thrown for 145,000 yards, 700 touchdowns, 600 interceptions. Oh, great. How many playoff wins has he got? 0. Oh, okay. What are we doing here?
But he's been there 15 times. Really? And you can't win one?
This is the best we've ever had.
But that's a Lions fan, though. That is the Lions fan mentality. This is the best we've ever had. We got to hold on to it. Want better. Want more.
Season 2019, he's got 20 fumbles. It's like, get him a line. If he didn't, every quarterback needs a line. But bro, he's got 20 fumbles. Every time he gets hit, the ball flies out, and the other team's getting it.
Dude, I go to work, and you should hear the way these guys talk, right? Just like hanging out around the water cooler. You should hear the way these guys talk. It's that right there. It is all of that. And then there's like the one guy who's a negative Nancy, who's like, Jesus Christ, man. He's been here for this long.
Let's roll with them.
Honestly, man, it is at my workplace, it is like having like Detroit sports talk radio on all day, every day. You've got one guy bashing these other 3 guys who are like, but he's the best we've ever had. What do you want us to do? What do you want us to do? And I'm just like, want more.
Yeah.
Just want better.
Yeah, exactly. All you got to do is people will say, well, you can parse stats and look at it any other way. Versus the bad teams, he's gotten a ton of touchdowns. Versus the good teams, they've played 7 teams above 500. He's got 9 touchdowns in those 7 games. So it's fine. You can get yards and get stats versus the crumb bum teams. That's fine. But versus the bigger opponents and the bigger matchups, you got to step it up. You can't turn the ball over at a clip like you have this year. Whether it be you have a line or not, you can't build a perfect team.
Okay.
You can't build it.
Before we go on any further, though, I want people to understand that we're not trying to bash Matt Stafford.
We like him.
I am bashing.
We want more.
I am bashing Lions fans, though.
We want more.
I think Matt Stafford's been a very good quarterback, and I think since Calvin Johnson has left, he's developed a lot more. He looks a little bit more consistent, and I think right now Matt Stafford's playing out of his mind compared to what he was doing previously in
Real
previous
quick,
years.
Look at the weather. Anything going on with the weather in Cincinnati? Road game. I feel like they're going to walk away with the victory. I think they're going to play well. The Lions know they're in playoff mode. They know if they lose, they're out. The Bengals have mailed it in. I mean, they're playing like they're getting destroyed.
Oh, yeah, the Bengals don't care. Man. Andy Dalton's like, whatever, guys. I'm here.
If you look at the record
on
the road,
AJ Green
on the road versus the Bengals, the Lions don't have a decent record. So
let me pull up Seattle's Seattle. Where am I at? I don't even know what day it is. Do I have pants on? Did I come into the studio with pants on? Can you tell me?
Cincy weather. But
Jesus.
I see them performing well and getting the victory. They got to play Green Bay and they got to win out. I see the scenario in which they play good.
And look, the Lions totally got helped out by Green Bay shelving Aaron Rodgers, and I think we all kind of knew what that was for. That if they would have won last week against the Panthers, we would be talking about something totally different right now. They would be shooting up Aaron Rodgers' shoulder, whatever they got to do to protect him, this, that, the other thing. But it didn't happen. It's the way it is. It's what it is. But look, the Lions are in a good spot right now if they to win out. I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs, though. You're going to have rain and snow on Saturday.
Oh boy, running back situation. Yeah. Mixon's going to be a factor. Maybe
it's going to be awful. Oh, hold on, wait 1 second. It just updated. So Saturday is rain and snow. Sunday will be cold, cloudy, and there'll be a 20% chance for rain. So It's just going to be kind of crappy and cold out.
Okay, so it's going to be a close game, and get ready. Christmas Eve, buckle your seatbelts. Lions, Bengals could come down to the wire. Maybe Prater game.
Dude, we'll be watching that together.
Yes, Prater game. Oh, we can drown our sorrows in our beer together at Christmas Eve.
That's right.
All right,
I'll be running around screaming about Opłatek. For those of you who don't know what Opłatek is, it's a Polish tradition. It's this gnarly little piece of wafer. If you're Catholic and you go and you get communion, that's exactly what it tastes like. And we got to all line up and we all got to break a chunk of it off and then kiss each other and tell each other, have a happy new year and good luck with life.
Yes, sir. Let's take our first time out. We got to peek into Detroit Tigers.
This is our show before Christmas.
Yes, it is.
I didn't realize.
Yep. We'll be here next week, too, though, because I'm on vacation, but I'm coming to the office on Wednesday, and we'll be here. We'll keep it rolling here on the network, and hopefully maybe we'll get a chance to have a postmortem. Maybe even big news will break because Maybe Jim Caldwell will be resigning. Maybe we'll hope for some news. We'll see what happens. Stay with us. We'll talk about the Detroit Tigers, trading Ian Kinsler, what we think of Al Avila, what's going on with the Detroit Tigers and their roster right after this. Doc and Jock here for our host site, Podomatic.com. When Adam and I first started this project, we were looking for a great place to host all of our recorded audio, and thank goodness we found Podomatic. We've recorded 700 to 800 weekly podcasts, and we've grown this network. People listen to us all across the country, even overseas. We get messages all the time that say, hey, thank you so much for keeping us in the loop with Detroit sports. Lots of fans of the Lions in England and Scotland. Scratch your head about that a little bit, but you say to yourself, wow, it's neat that we get to check the report and see that people listen all across the world and all across the country. And that's due to a great host site. When we're done recording a podcast, we just upload it quickly to Podomatic, and boom, we generate a great link so that all of our supporters can keep up with what's going on with the network. It's 2018. If you're looking to start a brand new project, you think you can run a podcast network or do a podcast with your buds, and you're looking for a place to host your recorded audio, don't mess up. Don't make a wrong choice. Check out Podomatic.com. The deconstruction of the Detroit Tigers, my goodness. People are discussing and saying, look, okay, good. There's a direction. At least we know they're going to tank. They're getting rid of all their star talent. Ian Kinsler, the latest Tiger to be shipped out. He is no longer a member of the team. His $11 million contract will be taken over by the Los Angeles Angels. And wow, what an upgrade. Justin Upton, Ian Kinsler in one offseason. My goodness.
They're buying up all the Tiger spare parts.
Now the question is going to be, how good a job can Al Avila do in stocking up the talent? That's the question. I wasn't upset. I mean, people are kind of dissecting that you've made moves with Arizona and Los Angeles and their minor league system is garbage. But in the end, Al Avila's right. He's honest. Whether you believe or not in terms of what he said and how he said it, he's absolutely right. He created a scenario in which the Tigers didn't have much leverage. Everybody kind of knew they were in sell mode. Some of it due to the fact that he came out and said that we're going to start the process of looking and shifting to a new direction. But at least you made the moves. You can't say you got nothing for it. Could you have maybe looked at other organizations and made some moves? Ian Kinsler had a list of 10 teams that he's going to go to. So when that scenario takes place, it kind of handcuffs you. And Al Avila said, look, I didn't have that much leverage. I made the move. And the other factor that you got to take into account is Chris Ilitch is like, dude, dump this salary. I'm not paying it. And I can understand it from that point. If your boss says, look, your budget's this, cut out the fat, you got to cut out the fat. And so I give him credit. Now, in the upcoming months and upcoming seasons, we'll have a chance to evaluate what this guy does and who he brought in. And so you can argue the JD move, you could have got more. But the moves that you made with the Cubs and the move you made with the Houston Astros, most people find to be favorable. So my grade for Al Avila is a C. And now you're going to, with a chance to get better, if some of these guys that you've gotten can produce in the upcoming years. And by all accounts, you got some stud arms in the minors. We're going to have to start paying attention to some of these players that are in Toledo and in Erie and in Lakeland and to see what's going on with the minor league system, because they're going to be those that are going to be playing at Comerica Park in the next few seasons. But I am okay with how it shook out trading Ian Kinsler. I'm okay with it.
I'm not. This goes back to, look, Al Avila's had some really decent trades, and then he's had some really, really bad ones. It's this mixed bag of just crap, it feels like. Look, what he was able to swindle from the Cubs, outstanding. You know, getting Jimmer Candelario, great move, right? Outstanding. That's awesome. Getting a couple pitchers here and there, that works out great as well. But you sit there and you trade away an $11 million second baseman who...
He didn't have a good season in 2017.
He didn't, but generally speaking, the guy's been lights
Solid.
out for you. You know, he's been outstanding. He doesn't make a lot of errors in the field. He's usually a reliable bat. And on top of all that, he's a good teammate, and he's a good leader in that locker room. For me, that goes a little bit. You know, it goes a little bit of a ways. And you turn around and you trade him for the 20th in their 24th ranked prospect? What? Like, these are guys who are basically going to be hauling balls back and forth. Like, they're going to be nobody. What are you going to do with these guys? You can't do anything with them. if you would have sat there and traded him for, I don't know, somebody in the top 15, just one guy, I'd have been much happier with that than what you got at 20 and 24. I don't see these guys even panning out or becoming anything for you. And if they do, I'll be surprised and I'll be the first one to tell you I was a boner and I was wrong. I just will. Al Avila goes out and he makes either really good moves or he makes really bonehead moves. And then what really sticks in my craw is after he makes this trade, he comes out and he says, it was one team. That's all I could negotiate with. I had no leverage. Why are you saying this? Why are you telling people this? Like, I appreciate your honesty. Like, that's one thing I love about Stan Van Gundy. Stan Van Gundy's completely honest. He'll call a spade a spade. And if he's an idiot, he'll tell you he's an idiot. You know? Al, nobody needs to hear this. But nobody needs to know this.
But isn't one of the biggest complaints in sports is that everyone's PC, everyone's just like, we tried our best.
That's fine.
We got two guys that we think are going to contribute.
You don't need your general manager talking this much. He opens his mouth and inserts his foot all the damn time. Look at last offseason.
What should he have said?
We're going to have a fire sale, and then nobody lined up to give you anything because you said you wanted to blow everybody out. You're an idiot. He shouldn't have said anything. Just say, hey, this is what we could get. This is the best this was the best offer that was on the table, and we had to take it. And really, truly, you didn't have to take it. You could have brought Ian Kinsler back. You could have let him play second base for you. He'd have did pretty decent for you. You'd have been probably the best player on the damn team. And on top of all that, you could have traded him away in, I don't know what, July or August? Or if somebody has some type of injury and they need a second baseman. He had 10 teams. You mean to tell me you can't sit there and get with 10 other teams who are looking for a second baseman? You got to go right to the Angels? I mean, the way I understood it, there were 4 teams he was talking to. And then in the end, it was the Angels who he went with. Okay, cool, bro. Good story. You know what? Keep Kinsler then. Show that you're willing to play hardball. Al Avila, it just seems like every single other general manager out there, just like, oh, hey, you know what? This will be easy. Watch this. Watch this. Watch what I do. It's like making fantasy trades with the dumb guy in your league who's like, oh, hey, you'll give me Dan Marino? I heard he was a real good quarterback. Yeah, I'll give you Dan Marino. You give me Tom Brady. That seems like a fair trade. Yeah, Dan Marino doesn't play anymore, you idiot. And that's what I feel like it is with Al Avila. Al Avila is the idiot guy trading for Dan Marino.
But here's what you read in the papers. 3 other clubs besides the Angels made offers to the Tigers. The Mets and Brewers were believed to be some teams that have made an offer. But Kinsler would only waive his no-trade clause for the Angels. So basically, you go out there and you say, okay, we got to move. We can get this prospect. We go out there, you go to Ian Kinsler. He's like, no. You go out there, you say, okay, I want to trade with this team. No, there was only a certain list.
But why do you have to trade him? You don't.
Well,
you don't have to trade him.
Wouldn't you assume the boss is like, make the move, save the money?
I would, but then they turn around, they bring back Victor Martinez for $18 million. So apparently we're spending money, or at least it's cool to sit there and dump $18 million into a clubhouse cancer, but you don't want to keep a guy who's a decent leader for your young guys? It makes no sense to me. On top of it, the $18 million man, he's got like no heart and he's got no knees, but you got a second baseman who plays pretty well every single day. What? Is this Bizarro land? What's going on here? Does Victor Martinez come with a roll of duct tape and super glue? Because goddamn it, he needs it. I'm so infuriated by this. This move just pisses me off because you get rid of a guy who can sit there and come in and play a position of need and help out and do good things in the clubhouse. And then when you turn around, I don't know, around July, August, when the trade deadline rolls around, you can sit there and trade him if you need to. Who cares?
I think with Victor, if I'm mistaken, I'm going to look up the contract stuff. It's one of those scenarios where if you tried to trade him, nobody was going to want him because of his
nobody
legs.
wants Victor Martinez.
Right, so you signed him to one of those deals where
buy him out. But again, it comes down to, why are you bringing him back? Like, he is damaged goods, right? He's damaged goods for a lot of reasons. One, he has the heart issue, right? And I know that they say that he's okay and everything's better with it, whatever. Okay, it could flare up at any time. On top of that, the guy's had, 4 knee surgeries? He's got nothing left in his knees. Also, he can't motor around the bases anymore. He needs a Vespa. So unless his $18 million contract comes with a Vespa in it, I don't want to hear it, okay? There's no reason for him to play DH for you because his batting average has gone in the tank every single year for the last 5 years. On top of all that, he is a shithead in your clubhouse. Like, I don't know how else to spell it out for you. He is a bad dude in that clubhouse. You go back to that New York Yankees fight. He was over there sitting there giving hand jobs and making out with dudes on the Yankees team instead of sitting there defending the Tigers.
Okay,
you don't need a guy like that.
Listen,
You don't want a guy like that.
I know you're angry, but after, he had his career year, he signed a 4-year deal, $72 million, $18 million guaranteed. The $11 million for Kinsler, you got rid of. You don't got to pay it. You really would, if you're an owner, cut a check to Victor Martinez, $18 million, have him walk away. That's hard to do, man. So they're willing to keep him.
I understand.
There's no buyout. He's got a guaranteed 4-year, $72 million deal.
I totally get it.
That's why he's on the team. He won't be after 2018. You got to eat the bullet because we're going to be talking about this down the road with Miguel Cabrera. Sometimes you sign deals to guys to try to get the most out of them in 2015, 2016, when you know the last year or two of the deal, you're going to eat the contract. So they're not going to, most teams are not going to write a guy a check for $18 million to go away. Even with the cancer, even with what he can contribute, the guy can provide some things. And unfortunately, this is the one contract they're willing to take on that's pretty much garbage outside of him and Jordan Zimmerman. Those are the two contracts where you look at, you can be angry because unfortunately, you're going to have two guys making $40 million that probably are going to suck.
And I understand that, right? And I get what you're saying about paying him $18 million to go away. But let's look at it this way, all right? You've got an aging Miguel Cabrera, possibly one of the best bats in all of Major League Baseball. We'll say top 5, okay? The guy gets beat up playing first base. It'd probably be best for him to move to DH. So now you create a logjam at DH because you got Victor Martinez still there because that's the only role he can play on this team because he can't do anything else. I wouldn't even count on that guy to bring me a cup of water because he might trip, fall, and hurt his knee. So now you've got a logjam at first and you've got a logjam at third because what you really should be doing, or you got a logjam at DH and now you've got a logjam at first and third because what you should be doing, you should be moving Nick Castellanos over to first, let Candelario play third if he wants, or whatever, whoever's going to be the best third baseman for you, because it sure as hell ain't Nick Castellanos. So you move him over to first, all right? You move Cabrera to DH, you blow Victor Martinez out, and instantly the clubhouse becomes a happier place. You don't have a DB like Victor rolling around, and on top of all that, you got your young kids starting to play, and you've got a much better defensive lineup.
I can respect that.
I just fixed this team.
I'm
not even Al Avila. Al, come pay me your check. You're a boner. I can
respect that you accept that the Tigers are selling. You just want them to sell with a little bit more talent, bring in back more people that can contribute.
I just don't understand why you got rid of Ian Kinsler for what you got rid of him.
No, and I think you and I both are on the same page in that if you ask us, do we trust Al Avila to build this team up, we're going to say no. And that's just the way it is.
It's been too many... It's too many 50-50 trades, Like I don't feel like he ever gets the upper hand on anybody. He'll turn around and he'll win a trade and then he'll lose a trade. Then he'll win a trade and then he'll lose a trade. And in the end, how is that helping your team? Yeah, cool. You swindled the Cubs for a couple players, but then you turned around and you got boned by the Angels.
So, yeah, if I'm the owner, I'm sitting back and going, man, we paid Pelfrey a bunch of money to go away. We're going to pay Anibal Sanchez $5 million. We got a couple guys that, Jordan Zimmerman, you thought would come in here and do some things. He's been injury plagued and he's making $20 million. So I'm upset with what Al Avila's done because some of the decisions he's made, Pelfrey, Lowe, haven't been good ones.
And those are on him.
Those are
his calls.
So
a lot of this stuff you can blame on Dombrowski, right? Like Victor having to get $18 million this year. That's on Dombrowski and that's on Illich, right? That's all them. I get that. But dude, like Pelfrey was just, let's bring him in, let's cut him a check. Low, let's bring him in, let's cut him a check. It just apparently was an ATM machine and just doling out checks to everybody. We should have gotten that line.
If we bring out the Jock's crystal ball, Michael Fulmer on the team opening day?
Yeah, because
I think so.
Yeah, because
it's tough to let go of a guy like that. He's got so much potential.
It is, but
it's hard.
I don't believe in Avila to be able to sit there and go out there and negotiate a trade with anybody. I feel like Al Avila sits there, and if you come calling, he'll sit there and answer the phone because he knows how to do that. Like he was taught that. He was, you know what I'm saying? Like, oh, I just picked this up and say hello. Oh, okay, cool. I can handle that. The phone will ring. He'll answer it and be like, hello, and they'll be like, hey, do you want to trade for Michael Fulmer? And he'll be like, well, and he probably messed Michael Fulmer's name up. Didn't he mess up, who was it? It was the guy who went to the Cubs who did nothing.
Justin Wilson.
Yes, he messed up Justin Wilson's name. What do you call him, like Josh Wilson or something like that? He was a total boob. Anyways, the guy's an idiot. He'll pick up the phone and he'll be like, yeah, so you want Michael Fulmer? All right. Well, let's see what you got. And then he'll go through, like, I don't know. He'll probably go to, like, MLB's website, and he'll just sit there and just randomly, he'll pull, like, pieces of paper out that have numbers on them, and one will be like, oh, you're number 30 prospect. Oh, you're number 6 prospect. Let's make that trade. And what you get back in return is a bag of balls, because he's a total boob. So, yeah, I believe Michael Fulmer will be on this team to start the season. End of the season, probably not. I'm going to say end of the season, there's probably an 84% chance that he won't be on this team.
Okay, and I think that the phone calls will be lighting up for Fulmer and Miguel Cabrera in 2018.
Trade them all.
If they can produce. That's what we need. We need them to produce so that you can find an avenue to cut even more. And that's just the case, and we'll see how this goes, and we'll see if you're proven right or you're proven wrong. That's what we got to watch. We got to watch how these prospects that were picked up perform.
I hate Avila.
Yeah.
He's an idiot, dude.
All right, final timeout. We'll come back with the round of the doctors in session. Jock's got a lot of questions lined up regarding this past weekend and some things with the Pistons and maybe a soccer team in Detroit. We'll get to that right after this. Thanks, everybody, for your continued support. 2017 was our best year, and we couldn't have done it without your continued support. Free and easy way to support us, go visit our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. You can follow us via our social media platforms. Follow Adam at AdamRSTROZ. Follow us on Twitter at Detroit Podcast, the most interactive social media Twitter page covering Detroit sports, in our opinion. Thank you so much for all of the new subscribers. Anywhere that you can find podcasts, people have found us, whether it be Podomatic, Stitcher, a lot of new subscribers on iTunes. We greatly appreciate it. It makes it really fun, when you got a network, you got, an opportunity to rap with your boys about what's going on, and we're getting support, getting calls and emails every single day, looking at what the hell are you guys doing over there in Sterling Heights? DSP headquarters is here in Sterling Heights, and we ain't going anywhere, and it's nice to sometimes get phone calls for interviews to talk about us and things like that, so it's really cool and really fun. Free and easy way to support us. Again, check out DetroitSportsPodcast.com. Yes, sir. Rolling right along here. Good podcast episode, man. Always fun to check in with Detroit sports. So I know you got a lot on your mind and what we call the doctors in session. I'm looking forward to hearing what you got.
But to be the man, you got to beat the man. And I'm saying, woo, right here. I'm the man. Woo!
I'm glad you got falling standards because I feel like I was off most of today. But that's all good. Let's get into this.
Might be the eggnog with rum I'm sitting here drinking.
It could be. Last weekend, you, sir, got to do some pretty cool things. And you got to take in not just the University of Michigan, not just Michigan State, not just Oakland University, but Detroit Mercy as well. Everything going on down at the LCA. So I want your take on these four teams and tell us what you think their ceiling is for them.
Yeah, it was a great experience. Really a culmination in your work covering Oakland University. I mean, it was really a great opportunity. And really, to tell the story quickly, I kind of gravitated toward Oakland in that you graduated there. I went over to your graduation party. That's kind of the first time I heard about Oakland. My sister went there, but I never visited the college. I never really knew. I'm like, oh, that's the school she went to, way, 20 miles away from my house. And that was about it. But you graduated from there. And then I just started to see about Greg Campy and his long tenure there. And having a chat with Neil Rule and his work there, I said, you know what? Let me go cut my teeth and learn something. And I like basketball. I felt like, okay, it's only like maybe a 15-minute drive from my house. Let me go cover and invest something. Let me learn something. So I went and invested and watched now the Oakland Golden Grizzlies in the better part of 2 years, watched a lot of things, learned a lot of things. And so I kind of had a feeling that maybe not this year, but maybe in 2018, 2019, that Oakland and Michigan State would cross paths. And being that I'm a Spartan Slappy, I kind of was self-serving in that, okay, there's a chance at some point or another, maybe Michigan State shows up at the arena. Maybe there's a chance I could sit in a room with Tom Izzo and be part of a presser with a coach that I looked up to, who provided me a great memory in my life back in 2000. And it intersected.
And a burnt couch.
And a burnt couch. And a lot of fun times and a lot of photos that I wish I could publish. But at the same time, it worked out in that there was an event going to be taking place at Little Caesars Arena, Oakland versus Michigan State. I'm like, okay, this probably is going to be something I can cover. And Vito having an in with Detroit Mercy, he's an alum there. And I'm a rare individual that actually has 2 degrees, one from Michigan State, a psychology degree, and a master's degree from Detroit Mercy. So I got a connection with both schools. People don't know that as much, in that I am a Detroit Mercy alum, and that's why I have showed up there, in that I have a relationship with them. So I get to go cover it, and I was surprised. Michigan Hoops fans didn't show up. Detroit Mercy fans, they're really non-existent because of the struggles of the team. They got a lot of issues. So to start with Detroit Mercy, they got to work out some really bad PR stuff that kind of came out. The suspension of Bakari Alexander, Perry Farrell, friend of the podcast, he found out what happened and reported it in the Free Press. If you listen Saturday, we asked him about how he got the information, and he talked to us about reporting, and he's got, fondness for us in the network and Vito, and he shared with us how he got the story, how he got the scoop. So Detroit Mercy messed up that whole situation with Bakari Alexander. A lot of negative press. Coach Alexander and the program has to build up a fan base. Nobody supports them because they've been losing for a long time. So they're at square one. They got to win some ball games to build up a fan base. You go to Callahan, and it's really not the best vibe because of the fact that you kind of are starting at square one. That's Coach Alexander's job, and he's making a lot of money to try and to bring back and energize that program. But I was shocked because it was advertised as a sellout. We get there early, and the vibe is pretty late, around 11:30. And by the time tip-off happened, the stadium maybe still only had like 6,000 people in it, and I was quite surprised. I'm like, where are all the Michigan fans? And the
Michigan
game
fans don't follow basketball.
No, and it
It's
kind of
like
hits
me.
home.
It's like me and like two other people.
Exactly, not too many fans of Michigan basketball that want to travel. Most of the time, games in Ann Arbor, Chrysler, they'll support it. But going out to Little Caesars, it was a dud of a game. Michigan kicked their ass. The first half was atrocious. I mean, both teams were turning it over, missing shots. You look at Michigan, they were without Mo Wagner. They're a team that can cause some damage because of one thing. When you got a team that can shoot and they can execute the three-point play, you're never out of any game. And John Beilein had an opportunity to talk to him about coaching against other coaches and things like that. And he's like, I don't want to coach against other coaches. I don't really like it and things like that. But his team is solid. I mean, a team like that can do some things and cause damage to a lot of other teams. But the problem with Michigan is the top-end talent isn't really there. They got basically a collective group of guys that can play together and play well. But when it's time to step up versus the big dogs, they're just a little bit short. And John Beilein's got to do a little bit better job of going out there and recruiting a little bit top. I'm not saying that the guys they got are not productive. They can shoot. They can do a lot of things. They got talented individuals all across the board. But I'm saying you got to go out there and get that blue chipper, that 5-star guy that can go out there and do some things and maybe be an NBA talent. But that team's probably going to be a Sweet 16 team. I like their ceiling. I think they can win a couple games in the tournament. Now, you get to the main event, and once 2 o'clock hit, the stadium was filled to the brim. You had two sections, the Izzone filled, the Golden Grizz section, the Grizz Gang filled, and you could kind of sense that, okay, we got a main event going on. And even I kind of poked fun at a Detroit news reporter saying, look, the Michigan game was just the appetizer. The main events right now, it's Oakland, Michigan State. They did not fail to deliver. It was an awesome game. Chippy, back and forth, emotion. Oakland had a lead with about 7-8 minutes left. And in the end, Michigan State, when you see the team that they have, they got shooters, they got size, they got rebounding, they got everything. So when you say what's the ceiling for Oakland, man, Oakland's struggling now with a bunch of injuries that are affecting some key guys. And Greg Campy in the post-game presser said it. He's like, look, I had a couple guys in boots. I had to play some guys that were a little bit hurting, a little bit injured, more minutes than I wanted to. But all credit to Kendrick Nunn, a guy that played in the Big Ten, looks like an NBA talent, looks like maybe even a lottery pick, was able to drop 30-plus points on Michigan State on a bum ankle. So you looked at that, and Kendrick Nunn's got some talent, and he's one of the best players that Oakland's had in a minute. Got a pure shot, can do some things. But collectively, Michigan State, Bridges, Cassius Winston, Jaren Jackson, Ward, that's a team now where their goals are win the damn thing, win the whole thing, go to the Final Four, get to the final game, and win it all. That's the goal. And the surprising part was in the presser, I'm there, and it was literally like one of those moments where you're like, wow, the Godfather walks in. And he sits down, and I said to myself, okay, yeah, I'm not going to probably fire off a question. So Vito did, and I'm proud of that we got a chance. So that's what I was thinking. Literally, I couldn't get, with John Beilein and Bakari Alexander, no problems. Me and Vito fired off questions. But with Tom Izzo, him talking, it was basic. He was talking about how he wants his team to do better. So it was all negative. It was just, I need them to do this. We need to do this better. We need to do that better. I want us to be judged based on a team that can win it all. So it's all negative. And Vito asked him a question about his team, and he went off and said, no, we're not anywhere near where we want to be. But in my mind, when he's talking, I get the gist of what he's saying. These reporters are firing off questions. All I kept thinking was, wow, this is another culminating step of the podcast in that we got two guys covering basketball. I'm in a room with Tom Izzo. I'm looking at him, and he's answering questions, and all I kept thinking was, wow, this is great. This is another landmark moment for the podcast. I can't believe this is where we've taken it from where we started. It was a great experience just to be there. So after that, I don't think I'm going to have that moment again because now we've arrived. I mean, we really got 24 credentials. We can do things. We're in the mix. So I'm going to put that behind me and stop being wowed. But Tom Izzo, obviously, if you're a State fan, when you're in a room with them is going to wow you. So Michigan State, the ceiling for them is win it all. That's the ceiling for them. That's the expectation. You don't win it all, you had a failed season.
Did you feel like when Tom Izzo was talking that it was just a canned answer? Because I seen the video and I thought it was cool, but
of course,
it's like every single year at this time,
yeah,
Izzo sits there and schedules
of course
10 games in like
15
12 days.
Yeah.
And then the guys are tired, and then he's like, it's my fault. I got to do a better job scheduling. I didn't give him a break.
Exactly.
It's the same shit every single year.
I thought for a second, and I had mulled over the opportunity to just ask him, hey, do you got to win it all to be validated? But I was just like, you know what? No, I was talking because the funny part was Vito, bless his heart, kept trying to fire off a question, and we talked before, and he kind of hasn't seen the vibe yet, but you got to just fire it off.
Yeah.
And so what Vito kept doing was he'd be like, Coach, and by the time two other people had already finished a sentence. And so I'm looking, because we sat next to each other, and I'm like, Vito, just fire it off. And I'm whispering to him, just fire the question. Next time around, Coach, someone else gets in front.
Yeah.
So I said, Vito, stop fucking saying Coach. Just say the question. And so he finally got it off. But bless his little heart. I'm like, Vito, in that environment, with anybody else, you have room to kind of wait. Dude, literally, it was less than half a nanosecond after Izzo's final word in his opening statement, a reporter fired off a question. So you got to be in there and you got to fire it off and you just got to say it and say it loudly because there's three other people at the same time. And he acknowledged it was quite funny, but it was another learning opportunity in terms of asking questions and being in a room with somebody that prominent. But I just couldn't get out of my own head and been like, wow, I'm 5 feet. Like literally, he's from where you are to me was the relation of how far Tom Izzo was to me. And next time I'll fire off a question. But we fired off questions. We were there. We were in the mix. Everyone saw us, and it was really neat. And then another part too, I know that you were a little bit chippy with, a little bit upset with Tom Mazaway for not acknowledging the network, but it was cool to see him there.
I wasn't upset with him.
No. Tom was nice. We said hello, and it was cool to see the Drew and Mike podcast getting a credential. It's really neat because of the fact that, hey, podcasts now are getting credentials. They're getting acknowledged. We've been at the forefront of that, and it's nice to see.
We just play that clip and open up the show.
Exactly.
It puts me in a good mood.
It's exactly.
Here, eat this.
So his podcast is doing well. They got credentialed. It was an event for the ages. I loved it. And now going forward, I don't have to have those moments anymore. Now, literally, if I do a one-on-one, I might just be like, look, Tom, off the record, I love you. You're the best. You provided me the greatest memory of my life. Thank you. Okay, let me get that out of the way right now. But after that,
kiss your toes? Can I kiss your toes? Thanks, Tom.
No, can I get a selfie? I got a selfie with Sparty. That was my only one fanboy moment. So that was cool. Nice. I had a good time, and it was good to be in the mix and to be part of it. But college basketball, I think that's what I like the best. I think if I were to cover anything else, the Tigers probably get some interesting stories, but I like college basketball. Quick 2-hour pace. Pressers are easy. The coaches give you more access. Quick note, funny story. Mm-hmm. With the credential, the security at LCA a little bit lax in that after the game, we walked up into a under-18 hockey game at the Red Wings practice, and me and Vito walked up to the players. Like, literally, we just like, hey, we're here. And we just walked. They were line changing to play in the game. Nobody said nothing. Vito did a little hit from there, and I'm like, well, let's just walk up to the goalie. The goalie turned around, didn't say nothing, and I just took the camera, and I was like, they just kind of let us walk around here? And I'm like, there's no security, so we took advantage of it.
And got a press credential, so.
Yeah, but it's kind of weird in that we walked up to the bench. They probably should check that. The kids didn't say nothing, but it was a fun experience. And college basketball, let's go, baby. It's fun times.
Awesome. All right, so with Nashville getting an MLS team, Detroit's chances take a huge hit on getting their own franchise.
See, here's the tough part about the MLS, okay? And it kind of goes to show you the bravado of sometimes some big-time people. What were people talking about? What were people asking for, clamoring for from the MLS? They want you to build a stadium. Mm-hmm. It's a huge deal. Build a stadium. We want a soccer-specific stadium. Build a stadium. It's like literally the first 4 tenets of trying to get a team. Build a stadium. Build a soccer-specific MLS stadium. Every single expansion team that's been added has built a soccer-specific stadium. So what does Detroit do? They come out and say, yeah, we want to build a Detroit soccer-specific stadium at the old jail site at Wayne, in Wayne where they botched that. And then when the proposal hit, that's not the plan anymore. They go, oh, you know what? Let's try and save some money. Let's pinch. Let's add Martha Ford, and let's try to present a proposal where we show how we can limit Ford Field to look full. That's fine.
Not what
MLS is being polite, and they're saying, wow, you wowed us. You did good. But it really damaged the credibility of the bid in that it's pretty clear when every expansion team that gets added has its own stadium, and you try and roll out with, well, we're going to use Ford Field. It's not, I think it took a major hit. I don't think it's going to happen. It may still, I may be wrong, but I think it took a major hit not building their own stadium. Shame on the owners. I mean, come on, spend your money. If you want to do it, don't piggyback off of other people to save a penny. If you want to do it, be a player. Don't try and do this on the cheap or try and partner up with other rich people. That's going to damage your credibility in trying to get this bid. I don't see it happening. I think that Detroit blew an opportunity to get an MLS team with what they did.
What would it mean to you, and what do you think it would mean to the city of Detroit if they were able to come back and get an MLS team?
If you dig a little bit deeper, I think it's polarizing. I think the fans of Detroit City FC are really doing a great job in the Northern Guard of just hammering people that are supporting the MLS, saying, look, they haven't worked with us. We've built our own thing. Fuck the MLS. They've done a lot of anti-MLS kind of stance and tweets, and it caught my attention. But I really do believe if you build a 15,000-seater, it can be a unifying force. Soccer's a great game. I mean, you sing, you chant, you build the community. But in Detroit, they've said, we've already done that. We got a fan base that grew from hundreds now to thousands. The Northern Guard's got like 80,000 Twitter followers. They got a huge following, and they're in the mix. They're not sitting back quietly. They're like, we got a fan base. Who cares about the MLS? And so it's a little bit divided, and so I'm not exactly sure how an MLS team will be supported early on. But like in anything else, you build a winner, people will come. I would go. I would go sing, buy the scarves, buy a half season package, and have a good time. I think soccer is great. I think it's viable. If you built that at the old jail site, I think it would have been great. The proposal for that arena looked amazing, but you got to keep it small. You don't got to build 20,000 seats or nothing like that. Soccer's a fun game. It can be supported, but we want winners, and that's what Detroit is.
All right, so speaking of winners, an up and down season for the Pistons so far. They started off red hot, then they basically slumped their way through the early part of December, only to turn it back on as of late. What are they doing well during this recent stretch of games, and what do they have to continue to do?
One name, Reggie Bullock. Stan Van Gundy decided, our starters aren't playing that well, and now with the injury to Avery Bradley, you got a scenario in which a dude stepped up and making some shots. And so sometimes it just takes that where you just need to mix up the starting rotation, and sometimes what happens is throughout the course of a season, teams figure you out, and you got to make changes. During the stretch in which they were losing, the starters were atrocious. They weren't doing what they needed to do. They went into a slump collectively. And it happens during a year where Tobias Harris, Avery Bradley, Reggie, they don't perform. But when your star talent doesn't perform, you have problems. And so what happened was in certain games, SVG went to the bench and started looking at some rotations. And sometimes it takes time to gel. And the game versus the Pacers was really telling in that they turned it around and got the victory and held on. So with the Pistons, really, in the end, to keep it simple, they're a shooting team that's got to bring it and play a lot of defense. And sometimes throughout the course of a game, the ebb and flow of the energy output just changes. And the Pistons, basically, in any given game, can compete. In any given game, they can get blown out based on their energy level. You look at it, Reggie Jackson, Andre Drummond, they got to be the staples of the team, and sometimes their effort level goes in and out. But it's nice to see collectively the bench do some things, and with the emergence of Avery Bradley, Tobias Harris, it's a team that can play well. The issue that many people look at with Stan Van Gundy is the use of his rotation. How is he, people are starting to now put the evaluation on Henry Ellenson, Stanley Johnson, because there's other athletes out there across the NBA that are doing some things. And so it's starting to look like Stan Van can coach and he can't draft because Stanley's being viewed as a bust offensively. Unfortunately, the dude's really solid defender. He can do some things on the court, but you had a game where you took him out and the Pistons looked like they were absolutely, didn't belong on the court. They played a really bad game, but they turned it around. SVG called one of those games the most embarrassing games he's ever coached, and that was bottoming out. They just didn't perform. They didn't show up. That's going to happen from time to time, but the questions now people are looking at with the Pistons are, Stan, you've drafted some guys pretty high. Stanley was a top 10 pick. there are other athletes out there that are dropping 40 for teams. There are other athletes out there that you could have gotten for maybe if you didn't take Kennard. You might have missed on somebody. You might have missed on another athlete by taking Henry Ellenson, Stanley Johnson, Luke Kennard. I'm thinking that I'm starting to formulate that opinion too, that SVG can't draft. I don't think that he views the talent correctly, because I think that you could have had further additions to this team that might have helped.
Devin Booker would be a nice fit right now.
Wouldn't he?
What does it mean for this team to lose Avery Bradley? Now, he's going to be sidelined for at least a week with a groin injury, and he's kind of been one of the
not ideal.
Of this team.
Not ideal. He is the identifying force of the team. I think he's the heart and soul, bringing the swagger to this team. But I think this can be a silver lining in that, based on when you have a guy that does some things, everybody else has to step it up. Reggie's got to step it up. Andre's got to focus more. Tobias has got to focus more. And you got Reggie Bullock taking over a little bit offensively, helping, the offense. So I do like the fact that this team does have a little bit of added depth, and they can do some things on both sides of the floor. So Avery Bradley being out is a little bit tough, but also at the same time, the schedule, the NBA really, if you look at the East, is not that great. So night in, night out, I mean, you're going to play games like versus Orlando, versus the Suns, versus teams like the Bulls, that you can basically, if you come with a good effort, you can do some things. So you can judge the Pistons against the upper echelon. They're not in the class of Cleveland. They're not in the class of Toronto. They're not in the class of Golden State collectively to win 4 out of 7 in the postseason, but they're in the mix. They're a team that can play. They're going to piss you off some days, and they're going to really excite you watching them. So, but in the end, I do think that Pistons fans are in two camps. Team Tank and Team Stay where you're at and see what happens. Team Tank says, hey, you're going to be 4th through 8th forever. Let's stop this nonsense and let's build toward a superstar, and let's bring some excitement to the LCA. The other side says, hey, we'll roll with what we got. We're building a core here. Let's not throw away the baby with the bathwater and just see what happens, because the team can win. This team can play and perform. But if you ask me, is this a championship team? I'm on Team Tank. Great. I would try my absolute best to shift away from Reggie and Andre, get some talent back, and start over.
Gotcha. You want a bonus question?
Go ahead.
All right. So I'm sure that you've heard about Jerry Richardson. He's the owner of the Carolina Panthers. He is coming underneath a lot of scrutiny for some workplace misconduct of the sexual harassment kind. So he's putting up the Carolina Panthers for sale. Now, somebody else, another billionaire, is deciding to kind of move away from one of the companies that he currently has and start his own sports entertainment company. And when I say sports, I don't mean sports entertainment, I don't mean wrestling. I mean actual sports company. So Vince McMahon, owner of WWE, is starting Alpha Entertainment. And we're going to talk about this a little bit on
Friday.
Yeah, the Doc and Jock Wrestling Podcast, so check that out tomorrow. But he's going to start his own sports brand with his own money, not with what WWE does. Do you think Vince McMahon would be a good fit to buy the Carolina Panthers? Mind you, hold on, before you give your answer.
That's funny.
Mind you, Vince McMahon grew up in Carolina, I believe North Carolina, and to me, it almost seems like a coming home story for him. It seems like it'd be a decent fit. On top of that, he'd be able to buy the Panthers, and then he could sit there and he could broadcast different stuff on the WWE network, and he's in with the NFL now.
That would be wild. I never thought about putting that 2 and 2 together and thinking about that. But first, with Jerry Richardson, nobody sells an NFL team. I mean, you really got to do some egregious stuff to sell, because it's an exclusive club. You're printing money. He's been the exclusive owner of the Panthers. Dude's 80 years old, so he's going to get paid. But yeah, you had to have done some nasty stuff to be forced out of. I mean, literally nobody, I don't think, sells an NFL franchise unless you have to, because you can just pass it along to family and just keep printing the money. Mm-hmm. But in terms of Vince McMahon, that would be some show, because he's a master producer, he's a master marketer. He would be basically, you have a blueprint of what it would look like. He'd be the Jerry Jones of NFL owners on steroids. He'd just be up in every press conference. He'd be saying some things. He probably would rile up. Something would happen with the league where, a catch for the Panthers is ruled not a catch, and he'd go up there and, insult Roger Goodell. He'd hype up the media. He's a master marketer. I don't see it happening, but I think it would be amazing. In terms of the rumors about starting the XFL again, I think it would be a disaster. But in terms of maybe what could be hilarious to get some attention, the new commissioner of the XFL, the rebranded XFL, Colin Kaepernick.
Oh, that'd be...
Colin
different.
Kaepernick's a team owner or some nonsense. But I really do believe that Puff Daddy probably is first in line. I don't think they'll sell it to him, but it was interesting that Colin Kaepernick kind of jumped on board and was like, I want to own the team.
What about Mark Cuban? Mark Cuban, I think, has been pining to get
Mark Cuban, he's in the
NFL
mix.
franchise.
It'd be interesting, huh?
Yeah, it would be. I like him as an owner, though, and I think he's a little bit crazy, a little bit out there, especially the way he acts at Dallas Mavericks games. I think he'd be an awesome influence and injection into the NFL because I feel like the NFL's super hoity-toity. And
one last quick note: it's a shame too that anybody that's going to pony up is probably going to do the whole dance of like, sure, I'll pony up $2 billion, but I need a new stadium. Hook me up. And I would do it too, but you got to do it because the stadium's old. And if you're going to pony up $2 billion, why not take $500 million from the city and be like, look, I'm going to invest $2 billion. You invest $500 million. Get me a stadium, or get me, a top of the line stadium here. We'll make it happen because you never know. The Panthers might not end up being in Carolina if the city says, "Oh no, we're not going to do that." So it's the nature of the game, and that's how you leverage an organization in a city. You say, "Hey, hook me up with the stadium, or I'm out."
I hear what you're saying, man, and it's what they all do. So I could see it happening.
Yeah,
I could totally see it happening, dude.
Great podcast. Enjoyed the conversation. Always enjoy rapping Detroit sports. We'll be back next Thursday for another edition of Doc and Jock.
Go Lions?
They're winning, damn it.
Maybe? I don't know.
This was locker room talk.
Second dick.
Sorry, Detroit. Didn't quite work out.
And all I can say is Detroit Sports Podcast scores.
I hear voices in my head. They counsel me. They understand. They talk to me. They talk to me.